Welcome to another episode of the Business of AI podcast, and I'm delighted to be welcoming Howard Chen from Alknoma. Howard, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and I'm looking forward to finding out more around orchestration. I know that's one of the key areas you're working on. But before we dive into the technical side, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you end up doing what you're doing today? And then maybe explain a bit about what Alknoma does.
So I used to be a designer. I actually started from designing like actual physical product, like building bikes. That's one of the very early, the early career I was building bikes. And then I switched to this thing called service design, and I came to UK for the study. And then I joined a consultancy firm. So yeah, I'm not the kind of traditional kind of like builder personality, but I'm kind of slowly transition into that mentality. And yeah, so I think I know design. I know how to like make things actually like work. Can be a bike. Just really seeing like a bike actually being like functional, like fully functional. That kind of excites me. And yeah, same thing with software, and same thing with like providing services that can be scaled, that type of stuff. And well, of course, I bumped into Cloud, and that was actually one of the. I was I started using Cloud very very early on, and it's just been an exciting journey ever since. Yeah, applying what I know about building products, and then actually start transitioning into like building a product that I was trying to actually sell, building the team, building everything around it. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that design background sounds fascinating. And when you say about designing bikes, I'd love to know kind of, what part of that you were designing. Is it almost the frame, the construction, the motor, the engines, batteries? I mean, which part of that? All of it?
Well, the chassis and well, I came from Taiwan, and it was actually a big hub for making bikes. People know that like Giants, the Taiwanese brand, and yeah, so a lot of actually there's a lot of research. There's a lot of try and error. We need to do like 3D modeling. We need to actually have someone ride the bikes and do whatever. And yeah, it was really just about like finding the best form factor to actually put a bike in front of the customers. And back in the days, I think the hot topic was actually electrical bikes. Line bikes was actually fairly new. If you think about it, it's just been around for like 10 years, 15 years, whatever. So yeah, really like way back, it was something that people were just really willing to just like throw the money at it. So we were like collaborating with the governments, thinking about how we can actually bring electrical bike to the Taipei city, and yeah, some prototypes for some of the European clients. But yeah, building bikes, it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's fascinating now. Of course, we see them. They're a lot more present on the street. Lots of electric bikes, but I think the way you described it then was really interesting because it was rooted in understanding the consumer, and actually
Yeah.
what does the consumer need, and then translating that into a product and service, and that sort of design thinking. I think that'll be a really interesting area to come back to, whether that design thinking based upon actually what consumers need is still applicable within AI, because I think far too often we see companies who will race to create something without really thinking about whether the consumers want it or what the consumers' needs are. Um, but perhaps we'll come back to that in a minute. Could you explain a bit about what Alknoma does and how that fits in as well?
Yeah. So Alknoma is set to just help people communicate and coordinate. Like simple as that. One thing that we've spotted across almost all the AI tools is that they can get some really cool stuff done. You can write thousands of lines of code in just one single day. But one thing that fundamentally does not change is the way people communicate within the team. And like most of the time, that's where time is lost nowadays, especially when you say, well, execution is instant, or it can be fully async, fully in the background. But then you still need to just reach out to people to just fight for, I need to get that PR approved. I need to get the trip to Vancouver booked because we're going there for a conference. And yeah, Alknoma is built for that. We realized that, especially like manager roles, most of the time they just spend time like chasing people, and they see it as like pushing the agenda. whereas a lot of those like low-level chasing can actually be automated. So we're working with teams, we're working with companies actually fairly small. They want to scale and they want to actually get a lot of these operational stuff done. And the key is not really just to automate the execution part, it's to make sure that everything is actually tracked. So yeah, all the follow through, like taken care of. You've got like probably 100 items of to-do list and you just put it into the product that we've built. And yeah, you're just going to actually figure out everything that needs to happen, talk to the human, and then actually track and make sure that everything is actually delivered.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting area to be working on, because I think the area of agents has really exploded into public consciousness now. And you talked about Claude Code; they've been one of the main sort of drivers of that. But we're starting to see sort of open Claude now as well. So people sort of really embracing that and figuring things out. So a lot of non-technical people getting involved in testing out those things. And when I've been playing around with those as well, I'm struck by the complexity, because you can get in and do a few little things, but as soon as you start wanting to make a system, then it starts to become very complex and you're starting to have to manage lots of things. You referred to that sort of whole sort of management layer and also the quality control layer. So how do you start to address that? How are you kind of, what does your sort of platform do that helps make that complexity less complex?
Well, I think it just goes back to the basics of developing software. You need CI/CD, you need evaluation, you need to continue to monitor every single deployment. You need to listen to what people are actually asking your agent. You pick up all the errors that people found while they're trying to use a product. And yeah, and for example, in our CI/CD, every single push, when we're pushing to production, we run like roughly 3,000 to 4,000 just really like prompt checked, making sure that everything's passing like 100%. We're not talking about like 99.5, like 100% passing. So we make sure that agent is doing exactly what we ask it to do, instead of actually going like haywire and just doing all kinds of random stuff. And to be honest, sometimes it still does. And it's that iterative nature, incorporating the entire CI/CD. That's the best way to do it currently, I think.
Okay, so for some of our listeners who might not know, CI/CD, that's the continuous integration, continuous development. That's the sort of the process that developers use to kind of make products better, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, acronyms. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
imagine it just being a loop of very automated check that happens every single time when you add a single like new lines of code to your software. And yeah, like you never know if that one single line is going to break everything down. And ideally it doesn't. But when that does, we know that it happened because of the automated check that happened. Yeah. And we are using LLM to actually check everything as well. So
okay, so effectively what you're helping to do is you're monitoring all of the prompts which are going in and all the output code which is coming out. You're able to then start to find patterns, and you're able to then ensure that if there are problems that come out, you can identify the path and the pattern that led to that problem. And presumably also the other way around, if there's really good results that come out, you can also kind of track that back. And in doing that, you can then identify more efficient ways, more effective ways to deliver the high quality so that everyone benefits. Is that kind of what you do?
yeah, I would say think of it as a contract. You're establishing a contract for your orchestration, because orchestration is incredibly messy. People can really just throw at you some of the most random prompt, like asking your agent to research some mythical ideas that's not really being around the internet, and they just like throwing really the most random stuff, and that sometimes can break your agent. So the purpose of all of those contracts is say, hey, well, I know this error, you've bumped into this error before. Now I'm going to make sure that in the future, this thing does not happen again. So yeah, it's just kind of like a growing collection of cases about like, when you bump into this, I do not want to see you do this, and I want you to do this instead. Yeah.
So that's kind of a really interesting, it's almost like I'm thinking about those manuals. If you have a car, you used to be able to get a manual for your model of car that would explain how to fix it. And there was sort of, you'd have little diagrams and tables and instructions. It's a little bit like that. But how would someone get hold of your rules, your contracts, in order to then benefit from all of that learned experience?
Ideally, they don't. It's just supposed to be an agent that just kind of works, really respond to your inquiries, your prompts really, really well. It's really just like our team's responsibility to really identify those like critical points where things actually starts to like go like a little bit weird. Agents start doing things that they're not supposed to do. So yeah, it's completely just like developer side things, like consumers just really using the agent as is. They don't really need to add new prompts. I know people need to do a lot of those things with Claude MD, but like it's basically a huge prompt file you send to Claude Code, which is the agentic coding agent. Whereas in our case, you focus on what your team needs to get done. We don't want to create an experience that has a lot of manual setups, especially because we're trying to help, especially operation teams that's not really that deep into the technical side of things. So yeah, it's out of the box. It's right there, they're ready for you to use, and you don't need to listen to like, you don't really need to dig into the 3,000, 4,000 like evaluation cases that we've written.
Got it. Okay, so it's a turnkey solution for businesses and enterprise. I was thinking there might be sort of where you make it accessible. Maybe it was because I was thinking from a software developer perspective, but it makes more sense. So your product, your service is something that businesses could get access to, and there's a lot of agents out there. There's a lot of platforms which offer agents out there, but it sounds like your unique angle is that you've got this optimization engine that you've been describing, where you've learned over time how to do it much more efficiently, effectively, and within those guardrails. Is that right?
Well, if you're talking about our agents,
yeah,
the most unique thing about it is actually that it can work with you over months and sometimes even years. So the one thing that like the things I mentioned previously, especially when we're talking about the gaps of communication coordination, it's one of the things that just really kills all of the Claude Code, all of the other agents. They are being a little bit more smart at it. They will add a little tiny scheduled task, meaning that it will call its future self probably 10 minutes or 20 minutes later. Whereas our agent is actually full on reasoning over temporal elements, like temporal materials, like someone on my team has a meeting like Friday, 5 p.m. We need to collect material afterwards. And the agent is basically just able to just reason about that specific meeting and then actually action on it right after the meeting has actually finished. So it's able to actually do this over very huge, like basically entire week, like 24/7. It's able to say, well, you want to go to Web Summit, and you have to like book like hotels, flights. You need to build a list, look into who you want to have a chat with. It's able to actually get all of those things done while actually making sure that the temporal element is actually taken care of. That's where it's special, and we need the optimization that I've mentioned previously, because there's just too many variation of how decisions can be made when there's a backend, like a state machine that just kind of keep going. And I think right now we don't really see a backend state machine that's as complex as ours. So I would say that's the, the biggest differentiator, but it's very, very technical. We try not to talk about it most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, but I can see the benefits of that, because actually when you're trying to create a system, if you're a company and you're trying to create a system using agents, it's quite hard to know where to begin. And we've talked about the complexity of building those individual agents and trying to get them to kind of come together. But you've also now brought in this dimension of time. And that's actually a critical thing for businesses as well, because there are certain things across the year that you would want to program, the seasonality. There are things like month ends for commercial reporting. And there's if then things that happen, if a customer does this, then do that. So I can see that time is a really important dimension there. So it sounds like you're almost kind of building you've built a tool that allows sort of non-technical teams to be able to go in and harness not just the agents, but also the ability to bring in that temporal layer as well.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that if you don't have the temporal element in your agent's reasoning layer, then you don't really have the capacity to actually sort out most of the operation people's headache. Because most of the time they're just chasing people, and chasing people is not sending 10 notifications. It's actually telling them at the right time to say, hey, I need this from you. And also come back probably 3 or 4 hours later, say, hey, if you don't give this to me, I will have to pivot. And then perhaps like next week, escalate to your manager because, time has run out. We really need to deliver. That person is not delivering. So please help. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked a bit about these layers and the execution layer. And it sounds like there's the ops teams that you're working with. They're the ones that you're sort of empowering. I wondered whether you could maybe share a case study or an example of a company or a team, an ops team that's sort of used the platform and how they've kind of used it to kind of actually could become an execution layer.
Yeah, well, right now we're mostly working with startups, and we're now trying to hunt for obviously large ops teams. And one of the use case that's being actually very, very fascinating is the way how ticketing and really just some of the startup like organization stuff has been actually handled by this agent. So one of the really early version of Avon, which is the agent I've built, has this very powerful ticketing management capacity. And think of it as operation, but it's mostly DevOps, right? So when customers send you some like complaints or like some requests, usually what happens is that ticket gets bounced around your organization a lot. It doesn't have a very clear ownership, and it doesn't really, its triage is very centralized. So it happens like once a week, perhaps. With this system, it's able to actually not just, well, this is another layer we need to talk about is actually, it's not only able to identify the temporal element, but also knows which person that it needs to actually assign those work to in your team. So it learns from your Slack workspace, it learns from your teams, and plus that temporal element. So it means that customer insights comes in, a ticket is immediately created, fully automated. It's already assigned to a person. So an engineer who is the most relevant person in a team view the ticket, approved it, and then the agent is able to actually just track and say, hey, well, I think this is roughly going to take 5 days. So I'm going to check back. I check this ticket like 5 days later, just make sure that everything is delivered. So that's one of the early use cases that we found really, really powerful. It's kind of breaking this thing we call agile system down. Usually tickets in flight, you take like sometimes like a full sprint to actually just get one simple ticket like sorted. In the system, we're saying because most of the stuff is now asynchronous, meaning you don't need to wait for the other person to actually get things done. It's almost always instantaneous. So we're achieving like 90% and 95% like time save, really just for all the tickets in flight. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that sounds like a great efficiency savings then to be able to come in. So an organization who's looking at trying to manage their operations more effectively, they could bring in your platform. It helps them to sort of then leverage the power of these agents to effectively automate the whole ops system. So does that change then the role of those people who are the project managers? Are they now sort of able to work on different aspects of their job? Has it changed their job function?
So we've had a lot of chat with people, especially as like project managers or product managers. And I think the interesting bit is that now they actually get to be more technical when they actually just want to scoop in like, some little tiny landing page fix. Some narrative will say that you should just go use Claude Code and, if you want to fix the website, why don't you just go use Claude Code and fix the website? And I think this is actually a really good thing. But then what you don't have is the ownership and accountability when things goes bad. What we are actually advocating is that we know automation is coming, so that's the automation with the auditable trait, like trial for like audits, to make it something that the team can all see, the progress, the status of the work, like what's actually happening in the background, instead of just one cowboy just jumping in and just like fix a problem without actually everyone being alerted. What's being changed on a landing page, what the marketing doesn't really want it, what the person that's actually relevant to the task doesn't really know about the change that it's about to be implemented. Yeah, so that's our thesis currently.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, because what you're effectively doing is creating a smart system, so that it can learn from all the different inputs and outputs and start to optimize across many different functions, many different tasks over time. I like the sound of that. Do you also find that sometimes when you're working with teams that they will have their own applications which you need to build around? So, some of them might have their own models that they've either paid for enterprise level API access to, excuse me, a model, or you mentioned some of the other tools that people are using, such as Slack, maybe even Jira, as well. Do you have to sort of map into whatever they're using?
Yeah, well, that's kind of just the reality of the product in like 2026, is that everyone will be asking for integrations. And I think it's actually it depends on the integration. If it's like a well-known provider and you can we are committed to actually just integrate all of those apps. So we have Jira, we have Slack, we have Teams, we have Google Drive, and we've actually done some really cool stuff with Google Drive. It's just fully agentic like file access on Google Drive, which Google can't even do it just yet, or maybe they're just working on something else at the same time. But yeah, like we do integrate with those software, and I think there's one key stat I want to bring to your attention and just to the audience, is that sometimes we don't really think that more is better. There is this one study done by BCG. So they've actually measured sort of like just how people felt when they have like multiple different tools. And if you don't have them streamlined, and if your day-to-day job is just to monitor those tools, like is the workflow still working or not, fine. But if you have the whole operation that you need to like handle, then you probably don't have time to actually handle all of those different tools. And your productivity actually starts to decrease. And I can actually point you to the research afterwards. So what we're doing essentially is an execution layer. So it's a pure just text-based execution layer. So everything that comes, no matter if it's just a meeting note, we're not going to build an integration to process your meeting notes, because they are essentially text. So agent can actually process that. And if those things are on a location that the agent can access to, and everyone on the team can access to, we can actually make the collaboration happen between human and AI agent, instead of actually just saying, well, we need 50 more different apps and you need to be the super doer to access the 50 different apps, whereas why just not put it on Google Drive and everyone can actually access the meeting note, access the plans, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, great. So in that instance, then I can sympathize with that a lot. I get a lot of meeting notes, both from physical meetings and online meetings, and you're saying you can bring all that together into a Google Drive environment, and then that's accessible. But then I don't have to worry about that. That's all done sort of automatically, and then the agent can go in there, read all that, and start to do its tasks based upon that, everything being that common repository.
Yeah. And the agent is shared by the entire team. So whenever agent wants to do some stuff, like an action, everyone on the team sees it. So nothing gets like, there's never like a single step that's like in a black box where you don't really know what's happening on your Google Drive. Yes, it's really important about the sort of like idea of collaboration that we want to build here.
Yeah. You mentioned an idea just a moment ago around, I can't remember how you put it, but it was almost like this concept of overloading the individual,
Yeah.
when they have many different tasks and nobody really wants that. And I was finding myself agreeing strongly. We use Slack, we use Asana, we've got a bunch of these tools, and of course I've got my inbox, I've got WhatsApp, and I've got LinkedIn inbox. There are many different tools there, and I find there's a lot of friction when have to go into this platform and then go into this platform and then go into this platform. Is the natural evolution, as far as you're concerned, that actually all of those sort of platforms will cease to be what the user goes to? The user will just come to an agent, and the agent will almost be the interface that will get information from all those sources, i.e. It'll be a much more personalized experience for the user.
Yeah, and that's why I think agent orchestration is fascinating, really. It has the potential of really becoming that one single interface that you get to access all the other kind of stuff. And I think right now it's difficult for people to actually understand the value of it. But when like prominent products actually out there on the market and everyone is using it, they kind of get that a lot of things can actually be like all collapsed if they're managed really, really well. And that is when you actually get that productivity gain, instead of saying, I need to open up 10 different code session and like another 50 OpenAI ChatGPT chat session. Your brain is not going to be able to track what's happening. So I identify that as one of the very specific challenge that needs to be solved. And I think orchestration is indeed the answer.
Yeah. No, I think we've got to the heart of why this is so exciting, right? Because that one single interface that you mentioned, that's now within our grasp because of the way in which the technologies have advanced, both the language models, but also the agentic interfaces, or the way in which agents can now process that information between humans and machines. So we're getting to the stage now where that's becoming important. And some of the ideas you talked about at the beginning around the sort of governance side of things as well, and regulations, you're effectively building the architecture for this one single interface, and it needs to have those kind of guardrails in place. I wanted to get your thoughts on SaaS generally though as well, because I've been to a few presentations, particularly from some of the big companies like Lovable, where I've heard them say that they think SaaS is dead. And there's, you hear a lot of investors say similar things as well, right? That now what Lovable's pushing, and other platforms are available as well, is they're saying that you can build your own platform using their tool, or using other things like Claude Code, and build your own platform, your own dashboard, which is designed for your company, for your business, for your specific needs, and so you don't need to go and pay for a really expensive thing like a HubSpot or one of those big platforms. Build your own, which is exactly what you needed. But how does your platform then fit in if someone's trying to make a decision on, do I want to go and build my own? Do I want to go and get something from Lovable, or do I come and use your system?
I think two elements here essentially, and I think the first one is my experience being in a management consultancy before, is that we see it all the day. Consultants go into a project and they fix things and they left, and that's the most horrible thing that could ever happen to that project, because the consultants left. So you don't really have people who actually keep pushing stuff. And imagine if you're getting all of your employees starting to vibe code stuff. What happens when they left? When they leave the company, right? Think about it. You need to build the whole thing from the ground up again, and that is going to be a significant cost for businesses if you really are just buying the idea that SaaS is dead. I mean, personally, I think SaaS is all about maintenance. It's not just about the idea. When you are there to actually making sure that the service is actually always running. When you're vibe coding those things, you're not building another SaaS product. You're just making something that potentially that works temporarily. And yeah, so and the second thing is, even if you can really one-shot some of the most complicated app, you still aren't certain that you're building the right thing. That kind of goes back to the design thinking bit, because I know what kind of agentic system I was going to build a year before. I was wrong, right? I was using Core Code like all day, like 7 days a week, but I still got it really, really wrong. So even if you can one-shot it, you're still not going to get it right, because it requires you to test and research and talk to people and figure out like what is the best way to actually like create like that atomic unit of how an action can actually be created in the backend. How do you describe to the agent about the task that needs to be taken care of? That is super difficult, and it wouldn't be learned if you've actually failed before. So will they be able to one-shot my app? Perhaps, but they probably wouldn't need me as well to be there to tell them what kind of stuff that you actually need to build. So yeah, it's very interesting with their narratives. I don't quite believe it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, thank you for giving your perspective on it. I think that's really interesting. And you're right that the part which businesses need is that sort of service level. Because you could build it, but then you'd have to go and hire people to build it. But actually, the reason you're buying a SaaS tool typically is you don't want to build it, you want to buy it, and you want to know that there's people around who will keep on helping you to add new features, or when things go wrong, or whatever it is. So I think you're absolutely right that that's the dimension which is really helpful. And with what you're doing in terms of building this one single interface, as you went on to point out, because technology is changing, we're not going to be able to keep up with that. But from your perspective, that's what you're doing. That's the one thing you're focused on, is keeping up with that technology and thinking about how to leverage the new technologies all the time to build up into that orchestration there. So I can see the value of that. Looking into the future, what are you seeing coming up that you think is really exciting and really interesting? And I'm going to say in the next 6 months, because beyond that, it's kind of hard to see much into the future at the moment, right?
It's something that about kind of like back to where I originally came from, like being a designer. And I think something about I used to study a thing called service design, and that's really looking into all kinds of touch points, especially like in a service that's made to scale, like for like the whole population, really, most of the time. You need to still design it. You need to think about human value in it. And I think the industry was slowly starting to understand that designing for those human value within those automated system is the top priority, because you can automate a lot of things, but if you don't really know when a human is supposed to intervene, it really invites a lot of risk. And design is just really about how humans deal with automation, like making like tools, making chairs. Those are automation, right? It's just not the AI level automation. So I will like, one of my big bets with just really the design industry, or just the software building industry, is that people will be more aware about this. And I think a whole discipline, or really just a whole methodology of like how we can actually streamline this, how to make this more effective, I think would be something that would be discussed, something like about like automation design. Yeah, that would be my bet, and that's something that I find very interesting in the future. And it's something that's absolutely crucial for almost all agent orchestration product out there, because that's what it's really important for you to service the human value within those orchestration products.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting prediction of the next challenge, which is as an industry we have to address, which is this need for human-centered design. And we're starting to see more people talk around this concept. But I think, particularly with your design background, it's fascinating to hear how that kind of fits into your plan. So just as we kind of wrap things up then, can you tell us how we can stay in touch and find out more about Alknoma? Are there particular things that you've got coming up?
Yeah, well, we'll be going to different conferences. We are still we still have the still very early stage. We're just sort of trying to get like all kinds of good conversations come in. We want people to start using our product and really just try out like what does it really mean for operation people to actually get that temporal element sorted. So we'll be going to London Tech Week, we'll be going to Vancouver Web Summit, potentially also Web Summit Lisbon, just to talk to all kinds of people. Alternatively, people can also reach out to us via email. It's basically contact@alknoma.com. So you can drop us an email if you're interested, just to really learn more about the product, or really if anyone has like any opinions on like agent orchestration, they need some input about like just generally like AI and AI tools and how does it actually work within organizations. Very happy to help any sorts of like inquiries.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, on your website, there's lots of background information on some of the projects you've been working on, some of the technologies, and some of those challenges that we've discussed today in terms of how to empower teams and that human-centered design as well. So it's a great resource there. And we've got a lot of events coming up during London Tech Week and across June. So it'll be good to sort of for people to come and find you there at some of the UK AI events as well. Well, Howard, it's been really fascinating. We started off by talking about your background in design, and we kind of ended up talking about design as well. So that's been a consistent theme, I think, here, and being able to empower those humans to really be able to make the most of technology. And it's about human challenges and opportunities, and then making the agents, orchestrating those agents to be able to work within those guardrails to deliver quality levels, to really actually kind of deal with that complexity. It sounds like you're doing some great work within that space. I love this concept of one single interface. I think that's that is the future for this industry. If you're onto something really powerful there, because I can see the future where we are just wanting to talk to one agent to be able to receive all that information, but also then to give them information, and we don't have to worry about all those different layers and multiple different APIs and logins and all of that, because it all just comes to that one agent. So I think that's really, really powerful. And yeah, I've really enjoyed talking to you today and finding out more about Alknoma. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.